It has been 13 years since I last sat in this chair and spoke about my life to a camera. I am 104 years old now. When I was 91, people looked at me with a mixture of pity and anxiety. They saw a widow living in a big house and assumed I must be drowning in silence. They would say, "Eleanor, shouldn't you move closer to the kids?" Or, "Eleanor, you need to get out more." They were terrified on my behalf. Now that I am over a century old, the anxiety in their eyes has turned into a sort of baffled reverence. They stop asking why I haven't moved and start asking, "Eleanor, what is the secret?" The secret hasn't changed. The world has gotten louder, faster, and more chaotic, but inside these walls I remain perfectly, completely, wonderfully fine. My husband, Harold, has been gone for 60 years now. That is a lifetime in itself. The empty chair at the table is still empty, and yes, I still miss him. But as I told you over a decade ago, missing someone isn't the same as being lonely. I have lived alone for nearly 3 decades, and yet I have never been lonely, not once. I know that confuses people. They assume that because I am physically by myself, I must be suffering. But I am not suffering. I am simply living a life that is programmed for quiet. If you are reading this, perhaps you are scared of the silence. Perhaps you are 20 or 60 or 90, and you feel that if you aren't surrounded by noise, you are disappearing. Let me tell you what I have learned from a century on this earth. Here are my updated tips for living alone without being lonely. Tip number 1. Stop confusing geography with connection. The first thing, and this remains the most critical lesson, is understanding that alone and lonely are not the same thing, not even close. Being alone is a physical state, it is geography. It means there is no one else in the room. Being lonely is an emotional state, it is a famine of the heart. You can be alone and feel completely full. You can be surrounded by 100 people at a party and feel desperately, achingly empty. I have lived long enough to see people trap themselves in unhappy marriages or suffocate themselves in shallow friendships just to avoid being physically alone. They treat people like furniture, just objects to fill a room so it doesn't look empty. But loneliness is about connection, not proximity. It is about whether you feel known, understood, and valued. At 104, my world has physically shrunk. I don't go out much. My legs don't carry me as far as they used to, but my connection to the world is deep because I stripped away the noise. I realized years ago that I didn't need constant company to validate my existence. I talk to my daughter Karen, who is herself an old woman now, every Sunday. We talk for 20 minutes, maybe 30. That is enough. You have to ask yourself, are you hungry for people or are you just afraid of yourself? If you are sitting in your apartment feeling a hole in your chest, do not assume the cure is to drag a crowd into your living room. The cure is to find a connection that matters, even if it is just one person, or even if that connection is simply with the world outside your window. Do not mistake the silence of your home for the emptiness of your soul. They are different things. One is a void, the other is a canvas. Tip number 2, build a skeleton for your day. When you are young, the world imposes a structure on you. School, work, children, dinner times, these things force you out of bed. But when you are alone, and especially when you are old, the world stops asking anything of you. If you are not careful, the days will melt into a gray fog. My second tip is the same as it was a decade ago, but now I adhere to it with the strictness of a monk. Build a routine. You must create the shape of your own life, or it will collapse. Every morning my alarm still goes off at 7 a.m. I do not have a job to go to. I do not have a husband waiting for eggs. But I get up. I boil the water. I take down the same blue ceramic cup I have used for 30 years. I sit in the same chair by the window. Some people look at my life and say, "Eleanor, that sounds monotonous. They don't understand." Repetition isn't boredom, it is rhythm, it is grounding, it is my way of telling the universe, I am still here, I am participating. Do you remember I told you about dinner? When Harold was alive, we ate at 5:30 because he was hungry then. After he died, I realized I wasn't hungry until 7, so I changed the schedule. That small act, eating when I wanted to eat, felt like a revolution. It felt like liberty. Now, at 1:04, I have adjusted again. I eat a large lunch and a small tea in the evening. The routine changes as my body changes, but the existence of the routine never wavers. It is the spine that holds me upright. This brings me to the hardest update I have to share. 13 years ago, I told you about Mildred, my opinionated cat who demanded breakfast at 7:15 sharp. Mildred has been gone for years now. Losing her was a different kind of quiet than losing Harold, but it was quiet nonetheless. When you live alone, the silence can turn inward. You can get stuck in your own head. You need something to pull your gaze outward. You need something that counts on you showing up. For a while, I thought I was too old to be needed. I couldn't care for another cat. I move too slowly now, and I worry about tripping. But I realize that being needed doesn't always mean being a caregiver. Sometimes it means being a witness. I still keep my bird list. In fact, it has become my most important work. The cardinals and the sparrows don't know my name, but they know the feeder is full at 8:01 a.m. If I don't get up, the feeder stays empty. That matters. I write down the date, the time, and the species in my notebook, just as I did when I was 91. I have orchids on the windowsill that will die if I ignore them. I have a journal that will remain blank if I don't write in it. These things are alive, or they make me feel alive. So here is my advice to you. If you cannot have a pet, get a plant. If you cannot have a plant, feed the birds. If you cannot feed the birds, simply commit to watching the sunrise every single day and noting the exact time it happens. Find something outside of yourself that requires your attention. It reminds you that you are a part of the ecosystem, not just a ghost haunting your own hallway. Tips are for 4. Be ruthless with your energy, quality over quantity. This brings me to the 4th lesson, and at 104, I offer this with even more urgency than I did at 91. You must be picky about people. 13 years ago, I told you about my 3 musketeers. Margaret from church, Doris from the book club, and my neighbor Helen. We were the guardians of each other's solitude. We understood that we didn't need to fill the air with chatter to be together. Time, as it does, has moved on. Margaret and Doris have left this world. Helen moved to a facility 5 years ago. You might think this would leave me devastated, drowning in that loneliness everyone warns me about. But it goes back to what I said earlier. Quality matters more than quantity. I do not try to replace them with 20 acquaintances just to have bodies in the room. I don't go to bingo nights just to hear voices. Instead, I cherish the memory of those deep connections, and I nurture the few genuine ones I have left. If you are an introvert, listen to me. You do not need a crowd. Society tells you that a full calendar means a full life. That is a lie. A full life is measured by the depth of your conversations, not the number of contacts in your phone. One person who truly knows you is worth more than 100 people who just know your name. Do not feel guilty for closing your door to protect your peace. Your energy is a limited resource. Spend it like gold, not like water. Tip number 5. Make friends with the person in the mirror. And now, the final and most important tip, the one that makes all the others possible. You have to actually like yourself. It sounds simple, doesn't it? But it is the hardest work you will ever do. When you live alone, there is no one else to distract you. You are stuck with yourself 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you cannot stand your own company, living alone will feel like a prison sentence. But if you can enjoy your own company, it feels like a palace. For years, I apologized for who I was. I thought I was too quiet, too boring, or too much of a homebody. I looked at outgoing people and thought I was doing life wrong. But I wasn't doing it wrong. I was just doing it differently. And differently isn't wrong. At 104, I have spent over a century with Eleanor. We have made peace. I like reading. I like the way the light hits the floorboards at 4:00 p.m. I like going to bed early. I don't like small talk. I don't like loud music. And I no longer apologize for any of it. If you are struggling, ask yourself this: are you truly lonely, or are you just uncomfortable sitting with your own thoughts? The cure for the first is connection. The cure for the second is self-acceptance. So here I am, 104 years old. The house is quiet. The tea is warm. The birds are at the feeder. To anyone out there who feels like a misfit because they prefer Saturday night on the sofa to a night on the town, hear this. You are not broken. You are not missing a piece that everyone else has. You are simply wired for quiet. And quiet can be a very good life, a very full life, if you stop fighting it and start inhabiting it. I am not just surviving my old age. I am living it. I am perfectly, completely, wonderfully fine. And if you listen closely to your own heart, you might find that you are too. Now, if you'll excuse me, it is time for my tea. And this time, I won't apologize for taking my time to enjoy it.